Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here. It's going to be my patch 11.1 Liberation of Undermine Warlock raid review video. We're looking at all the bosses today from raid testing, talking about what spec I think is best in the fight, maybe second best spec as well. It's mostly Hellcaller stuff, spoilers ahead, and all of that. If you want actual talents or things like that, my website link's up here, as well as down below in the description. It should be up to date with talent builds, as well as raid boss talent builds when the actual raid goes live on Tuesday. Let's get right into it. Vexie and the Gear Grinders is going to be the first fight you encounter inside Liberation of Undermine, and from a Warlock perspective, this is going to be a Hellcaller fight. We talked about it already. Hellcaller is going to be the best spec overall this tier for the most part, Wither spread cleave profile, Malevolence being very strong to flare up your Withers, so on and so forth. Now, Affliction was looking pretty strong in this fight until this week when Destruction was buffed, the buffs to Chaos Bolt, the changes to Wither and all that have come in. I do feel the changes to Wither have just made it better in a raid setting, and maybe a bit worse in an M+ setting, but overall still just very solid. Hellcaller is still very strong, very competitive, and for this fight, I'm going to say you're probably going to be playing a Hellcaller version of Destruction with some cleave. Now, the adds do spawn spread across the room, but you can bait them against the wall here, get a good bit of Havoc cleave or Mayhem cleave if you want, depending what you want to play here. You might even look at specking in the Rolling Havoc on this fight as well with the relatively high amount of cleave you have in this fight. It's not permanent 2 targets, but it's close enough where you might be able to get some good value. But at the same time, the boss does have a big damage taken phase when he hits max energy, but there is some cleave there as well to further add some more value to Rolling Havoc. I wouldn't fault you for playing Affliction here if you wanted. It is also a pretty strong profile. A lot of like spread cleave with Cold a Week when you get multiple dots rolling on his adds, and in intermission, with a decent bit of funnel on the boss. But with the recent buffs to Destruction, I'm going to say ease of play, quality of life, and just in general, the toolkit looks to be a Destruction fight. Cauldron of Carnage. It's Carnage, I know. It's going to be the second fight you probably encounter as far as pacing is concerned in this raid, and I'm going to say this is going to be an Affliction fight. You could play Destro here. A lot of this depends on how your raid approaches this boss. If your raid lets you cleave the bosses as Destruction, comparatively to just hitting one boss and leaving the other one alone. If you do dip into the other side of the room, say I'm on the blue side here and go to the fire side, I will indeed get both debuffs and have both mechanics to deal with, which can be sort of annoying. You're also like soaking random effects in the fire side of the room. Running on the lightning side, the blue side here, if you hit max energy on a static bar, you become stunned. It's a pain to multi-dot on this fight, which is why I think Affliction playing Hellcaller with Absolute Corruption, or Absolute Wither, looks to be strong here. Their actual clash in the intermission lines up pretty well with your 2-minute Dark Lair CDs. As long as you're popping Malevolence on cooldown, you should have that there as well. And I think for the most part, this is going to be a strong F fight. Also, just refreshing Agony every 18 seconds if need be isn't that hard to do. If you do stand in the direct center of the room when you Dark Lair, or whenever you look to cast or proc a Jackpot, which is tied to your Dark Lair, it will indeed spread UAs to both targets here, but Mayhem will not cleave on these passively. They're too far apart. And if you want to Havoc this is Destro, you can, like I said, but dancing back and forth a bunch, getting both debuffs is a pain. And honestly, this boss should just die. Now, in the Clash part here, you have Dark Lair and things. Typically, you also have Infernal for the most part as well. And you can get a lot of stat cleave here, but I think for the spread portion of this fight and how mechanically, maybe intense is the word, maybe not the word. It's not that challenging, but there's a lot going on when it comes to both sides. It was a bit harder to multi-dot comparatively to things like the boss and Aberrus, whatever the elemental boss was. So for that case, I think probably playing Affliction here with Hellcaller and Absolute Wither itself. Rik Reverb is likely number 3 or 4 you encounter, depending on tuning of both Rik and Stix, which is going to be the 4th boss in this video, and probably the 4th boss you encounter in the raid. Rik Reverb being number 3 in this video means we're going to be playing probably Destruction here, probably looking at a Hellcaller angle once again. You can semi-bait the actual barrels to spawn here. It seemed like a bit on PTR. That may change. Some did spawn way in the back of the room, and they need a decent bit of burst damage to actually burn them down before they explode and do a lot of damage to your raid. Now, on top of that, the boss at times is stacked on the adds, at times cannot be based on sound pylons and things happening. And you're also micromanaging the energy on the pylons, which can be a little annoying at times. With the buffs to Destro and it being 200k, if not more, so I think ahead of Affliction at this point in single target, I would say this is also going to be a Destruction fight. You're looking at more of a Hellcaller angle. Hellcaller and Diabolus are both very, very close in Sims now for single target, and neither... they play the same build if you're playing any kind of cleave elements. You can play Mayhem here, you can play Havoc here, with the ads spawning every so often and being more of a controlled cleave setting and not a constant, heavy just cleave setting permanently, I would assume you're playing Havoc here in this build likely. But if you want to play Wither, or sorry, Mayhem, it's probably okay as well. But this is going to be, I would assume, a Hellcaller Destro base fight due to the actual strength of Wither, and just in general, Destro's recent buffs, need enough to kill the boss quickly. Not much else to really say. Affliction can be played here, but the stat cleave of the bombs is semi-RNG. Vitality, if you're playing here for agony applications, is going to lose you a lot of damage from the boss in single target. The profile is not really built for this kind of boss as well as Destro is, as long as Destro is competitive. And with the buffs, Destro with cleave fights and things is going to be competitive. Stix Bunk Junker will likely be the fourth boss you encounter in the raid, and this boss could be tuned a bit difficultly, I guess, depending on the boss's health and overall mechanical requirements in this fight. On Mythic, the longer this fight goes, I believe an extra ad spawns, there's more things to kick, more mechanics, and it ramps in both HPS requirements, and I mean, essentially the DPS requirements should be relatively high. Now, one of the bigger things here as well on Mythic is that when the actual larger bombs spawn around the room, they have this ad on top of them that needs to be brought to 75% health, or lower, I suppose, to break the shield, and then have the actual players rolling on the balls, able to run over them and essentially negate the mechanic. Outside of that, if you're not, one of the people rolling around the trash ball, the boss is going to be a patchwork-esque setting unless you're cleaving things down. And I feel like classes like Boom and things might just be doing that passively. There's a lot of just beat grinder ads in this fight. The dog packs run around, which can be brought into melee and cleave down. And honestly, I could see I see more Destro and Demo being played here. There's maybe a world where some people play Affliction, but I'm going to say this is likely going to be a Demonology fight. Demonology is indeed our highest spec in single target, and as far as cleave is concerned, as long as you can bring the ads into melee, which seem to be relatively easy on this boss to do so, just being gripped in and all that kind of stuff, barring the ones that are permanently stuck on the floor on the trash balls, you should be able to get a good bit of stat cleave. Demo's 1 minute damage profile works well in this fight as well. I could see a world where you're playing Destro here, probably just playing Mayhem for random RNG cleave, or if you're needing more cleave on the actual ads themselves that spawn in, playing some Havoc cleave on the boss and the larger shielded ads on Mythic. I'm going to give the nod to Demonology here, though. Demo and Destro are more competitive here. I mean, they're higher in damage in general, and if this boss is indeed a bit of a single target DPS check, you're definitely playing Demonology or Destro here. Affliction's about 200k behind, somewhere in 11.0, hoping for, buff still. Don't tell it, it's a patch behind. Sprocketmonger Lock and Stock is going to be the only patchwork, meaning single target based encounter in the entire raid, and this is going to be a Destro or Demonology fight. Affliction, with the lack of buffs recently, is just not going to be as strong as Destro or Demo in this fight unless something happens that we are not seeing somewhere. Maybe some more buffs at some point. But week 1 of this raid, I'm going to be playing Destro or Demonology here. Now, there is a lot of sporadic movement on this fight. On Mythic, you have opposing debuffs here, blue and red. On Heroic, you're not going to have these opposing debuffs. This is a Mythic only mechanic where you can't touch opposing players' colors and stuff. But for the most part, on Heroic, the actual mechanical overlaps with the intermission, the actual fire beams here, the rockets, are relatively the same. This might be a double Warlock fight, depending if you need 2 locks for the intermission to traverse the actual platform for gateways and such. I'm going to lean towards playing Destruction here, but I could easily see Demonology depending on overlaps and such. I think it sort of depends on actual CD timings. Both are strong here. Demonology is going to be your higher overall DPS spec in single target by about 100k, give or take. But there's a lot of movement in this fight at times. Pet AI and things can be a little frustrating. Pets run incredibly slow. And depending where all that goes, I can see both. I'm going to lean a bit more toward Destruction here. Possibly playing a Shadowburn build, even though Shadowburn isn't as high as CDF this tier for Destro. A lot of random movement, and having the option, the ability to Shadowburn while you're moving is indeed an incredibly strong part of Destruction, even if it's not as strong this tier as it was last tier. I'm giving the nod to Destro here. Hellcaller, Diabolos are both fine. Diabolos is a little bit ahead when it comes to single target damage for Destro, but at the same time, in the intermission, when the boss jumps away and such, you can get a bit of additional Wither cleave. So I wouldn't be surprised just to see Hellcaller here, but in general, I'm going to say Destruction, and the hero talent build may depend on how the boss looks in its final form. One-Armed Bandit is going to be the third to last boss, the boss before the penultimate boss, and this is going to be a Destruction fight. There is a potential to maybe see some Affliction here for some kind of funnel damage, but I don't think Affliction's funnel is going to be as strong as Destro post buff with the CD timings on the ads. Now, you do typically hold CDs until the first set of ads comes out here. You don't pop on pull. They come out now, and you can see how this is going to likely be a very, very good Hellcaller fight. Spread cleave here. I don't believe the ads are knockable, grippable, or anything of that sort, and you're going to be killing 2 of the 3 ads in a priority base setting. Now, you can play Mayhem here. I would assume, I believe Havoc is better for more control cleave on 1 ad in the boss, or just 2 ads if you designate that as your raid needs for all that comparatively to boss damage. You could play Affliction here. I think in testing, Affliction was likely a little better than Destro, but most just ended up playing Affliction or Destruction during testing. We were looking at playing AF in this fight up until, I would say, this week with Destro buffs, but the fact that the final part of this fight is single target based, and it's pretty much a soft and rage with a pretty tight timetable on it, I think you're playing Destro here. Destro's ahead of Affliction by 200k or so in single target, depending on a couple other things here and there. The actual Havoc cleave base profile, the being spread, more burst, is arguably stronger depending on the mechanics of the fight. Both builds can play, or both specs can play Hellcaller, being Destro and Affliction. I am leaning towards Destro here by a long shot. If you're not playing Destro here, you're playing Affliction. This is not a demonology fight, but my nod goes to Destro. Hellcaller, Destro, spread cleave, playing Havoc, getting consistent value here in his ads, and having a bit more, a better suited profile for phase 2 when that boss is in patchwork form, it's single target, and you're hoping to kill the boss before he basically just soft and rages, fills the room with lightning, and kills your raid. Mugzee is the penultimate boss in Liberation of Undermine, and this fight is pretty hectic from the get-go. Sort of think Tindrawl in a sense, but a cool version of Tindrawl when everything's just hell's breaking loose from the actual start of the pull until the end of the fight. There's a lot of mechanical checks that need to use one side, like the brown side and the gray side here, to break the other side's mechanics. The bombs on Mythic from the actual iron cyber on here need to be used on the brown side to break the walls. The finger gun the boss does from, I guess, both sides technically needs to be used to break the shields on the ads that are flying around the back of the room. The fight is mechanically very demanding, but I don't think this fight's going to take a whole... I don't think this is a Tindrawl 300 pull level boss, because once you know the mechanics of the fight, it's, for the most part, I'd say relatively rinse and repeat. That being said, the fight still does look very, very cool, very, very exciting, but very, very intense. I think this is going to be a destruction fight. Affliction just struggles here with its toolkit. Too many spread ads, not enough ramp damage, just outdated combat, no quality of life in most settings of that. No soul swap mechanic. Demonology here, once again, just a lot of spread cleave. The actual bombs in the back don't need to be killed with like actual DPS from players. Hellcaller, Destruction, I would say, is the play here. A lot of spread cleave. You can Havoc the prio ads when they spawn in, where you break the shields on the ads in the back of the room that need that burst damage profile to be killed before they do more damage to the raid or do other effects that, they need to die before they basically finish their effect. At the same time here, you can Havoc the boss and go into this cage here. The wall there is LOS, but you can still hit the ad and your Chaos Bolts will fly over the LOS wall into the boss. So that's a bit of a cool little trick you can do as a destruction. At the same time, AF can dot both with Wither, but the fact that Destro can have big, massive Chaos Bolt cleave is a bit stronger there. So I'm leaning towards destruction, Hellcaller based here again, feeding into it being mostly a Destro, but definitely Hellcaller based here. Mugzee also follows suit. Now, as far as Gallywix is concerned, the final boss is never tested anymore on PTR, and there's a bit to pull from the actual dungeon journal here. Now, for those that haven't seen it and things, so on Heroic, the actual phases and things look like this. You have Stage 1, House of Chrome, and Stage 2, Mechanical Maniac, Docked and Loaded, and Stage 3, What an Arsenal. On Mythic, there's basically one stage. They've taken Stage 3 from Heroic and put it to Stage 1 on Mythic, so we don't know what Mythic looks like, really. It's going to be a hidden fight, hidden mechanics, a lot like Gul'dan was in Nighthole, where they've taken certain parts of the fight. Hey, it's happening at the start now, deal with it. Here's a new fight. We don't know what it's going to be, but it should be very cool. Now, looking at the journal here, there should be a decent bit of cleave in this fight. A lot of mechanical things happening, a lot of mechanical overlaps and such. Stage 1 mentions big bad bunch of bombs, blast burn, bad belated bombs, all this stuff here. Greedy Goblin armaments, trick shots, Mechanical Maniac. In the intermission as well, Darkview's cronies are also mentioned here in phase 2. Technicians, they drop bombs upon death. Sharp shot sentries, it's interruptible, focuses energy at people, need to be kicked. Wrench mongers, all that stuff in the intermission. A lot of other things happening here as well. And Stage 3, What an Arsenal. There's basically Hell Breaking Loose and more Dark Fuse cronies. We're not really sure what's going to be more of a stack cleave profile, if it's even possible to stack things. If it is, honestly, it could be a good demonology fight. Don't sleep on Demon in those stack cleave fights. It's very good in single target, and its stack cleave is also very strong even after the tier nerf. The problem is, like, most of the fights are good Hellcaller fights if you're a Demo fan, which Demo doesn't have. But if this is a stat cleave fight, Demonology is good in ST, one of the better PI targets this patch, and has good stat cleave. At the same time, could be big Destro fight, spread cleave, all that. We'll see when we get there. But either way, I think from reading the journal here, Locke's profile does look to fit the fight relatively well. Not going as far to say it's going to be a 2 Warlock fight, we just don't know, but we'll find out soon. Now, as far as Warlock is concerned, this tier in general, looking at all the bosses, with the Destro buffs that are coming in on Tuesday and were announced yesterday, I think Locke's in a solid spot. We're still one of the lower DPS when it comes to, like, single target range DPS. I think we're still the lowest overall. Destro's like 2.56, 2.55, Af's like 2.4 in 11.0, still waiting for buffs. I don't know. Demo's like 2.68. Once again, this tier is not a lot of demonology based fights. You can maybe make some stat cleave with things like Stix, maybe on Rik Reverb, possibly on Gallywix. We're not really sure. But once again, talking about it a lot in the video, it's going to be a very good Hellcaller tier, favoring destruction most likely, maybe an Af fight or two, depending where it all goes. Now, if you're asking about comp and things, this raid tier, the first 4 bosses in a world first setting, even like depending on the first 4 or 5, depending on difficulty, are more just based around what they think is going to be the better classes and specs for the final few. So these are going to be used a bit for gearing and things. Like we saw, THG wasn't even in for the first boss in the Spider Raid, Big Mommy Land, whatever it was last year, right? There was no Warlock in. They didn't need any gear from it. Now, as far as like average comps, like my guild, everything else, like we're a Hall of Fame guild, we're not, world first or anything. There's more like just comp and things taken into account too. And I think Warlock fits every fight relatively well. Vexie, once again, good Hellcaller fight, good spread cleave. This fight should die pretty easily regardless, 1 or 2 pulls. Cauldron of Carnage, actually a pretty good fight. You might see multiple Warlocks, like probably 2 locks here in a lot of settings. Af is very good in this fight. You can do a lot of damage to the other target with Wither. Not even running back and forth multi-dotting it. Just throw Wither up on the pole and single target the other boss down. You're fine. When it comes to cooldowns, they clash in that 2-minute mark roughly, which gives you stat cleave from Dark Lair, good Hellcaller cleave in general, Malevolence, and just as good. So I could see 2 locks on Cauldron. Once again, easy fight. Whatever your guild needs, probably not that big of a deal either way. Reverb probably is a 1 Warlock fight. You get some barrel cleave. I think Boomkin's probably just carry barrel cleave a bunch in this fight in the first place. Probably 1 lock fight, Destro based. And maybe Demo if you can get stat cleave or whatever. It is what it is, right? Stix Bunk Junker is going to likely be if you need a solid single target range profile and a stacked meat grinder cleave profile, I could see 2 Demos here. It's probably a 1 Warlock fight. I think Boomkins can carry on Mythic the just more spread cleave, shield breaking on larger adds that are sitting on top of the bombs. And even for Mythic purposes, unless you need more like on-demand burst cleave from Destro locks, probably a 1 lock fight. It could change depending where things go. Sprocketmonger on Heroic is probably going to be, depending what you want. If you want, a lot of like solid single target range DPS, you probably just stack BM Hunters here. They can cast and move permanently. They're simming higher than everything in the game now. Blizzard overbuffed them by some reason. Don't know why. But it's probably a 1 lock fight unless you need 2 gateways on Mythic. Because on Mythic, there are bombs put at the very front of the room when you get pulled to the very back. You have to get there quickly. And the rate is split on both sides. So depending how that goes, you might need 2 locks there for gateways. You might not. I'm going to lean towards 1 lock in this fight unless you want like a Demo damage profile or something. But there's a lot of range that are around Demo's DPS and single target. Albeit Demo's a good PI target, but BM is just better in general. So probably 1 lock here, but could be 2 on Mythic depending what the fight dictates, all that. 1-arm Bandit, you're going to see 2 Warlocks. 2 Warlocks, I don't think you're going as high as 3, but you're definitely going to see 2 here. I would be very surprised if you don't. This is a very good Warlock fight, very good Hellcaller fight. Spread cleave again. Hellcaller, Destro, Af. I think Destro's better here, but you're going to see probably 2 here at least. Maybe possibly 3 if you're trying to stack it a crazy amount and like you need more cleave, but you got to take into consideration the last phase being single target based and needing more like just patchwork damage there as well, which Destro's fine at, but not as good as like, a BM Hunter or Fire Mage, which is even like Fire sort of like in the first place with single target. Not insane, but not terrible. Better than Destro though. Mugzee, probably a 1 lock fight unless you want more Havoc cleave on the adds that you break with finger guns and like the actual cages. I could see 2 Destros here with the LOS cage mechanic cheese and boss funnel and needing like spread cleave on the adds on the more mechanical side of the room. Just where it depends, though, what your raid needs. Likely a 1 lock fight, but Hellcaller based. And once again, depending where it goes, well, we'll see. Gallywix, depends. Who knows? Mythic is hidden. Heroic seems like it could be a good cleave fight. There's a lot of classes that have good stat cleave, a lot of classes that have good spread cleave, and in the end, don't really know. Haven't tested it, so we'll find out when we get there. But to recap this whole video, I think Locke is fine this raid tier. We're not S tier or anything in the raid, but we're not bad, right? Good spread cleave profile, and even though Destro is lower than most DPS, I think it's like still one of the lowest in general across range and melee. The profile does fit very good. A lot of the cleave bosses are early on, except for like one-arm bandit, but still, I think we're better this tier than we were last tier going into Nerebar Palace. So thanks for watching, guys. It wraps it up, and hopefully it gave you all a bit of a better look at how Warlock looks heading into Liberation of Undermine, the specs you probably are going to end up playing, and just maybe a bit of a better feel for the boss as a whole. I think this raid's going to be fun. Tested it a lot on PTR. I got tired of it towards the end, but in a good way, just a lot of testing. But Locke looks decent with the buffs. Some maybe double Warlock fights, depending on what comps look like and all that. BM looks pretty good now, too, so that might push us out. But hey, we'll see where it goes. And Week Wars add-ons and profiles in the video you saw, you want links to up here, as well as down below in the video description. And like always, a massive thank you to all my supporters on Patreon for all support, guys. Thank you all so much. It allows me to keep doing what I'm doing for y'all and just, you know, creating content, and I greatly appreciate it, guys. If you're looking at supporting on Patreon, should be a link up here, once again, as well as down below in the description. It's been a wild couple weeks with AF being buffed, Destro being buffed, Demo getting some changes and all that. We've said we're going to play XYZ specs in the raid mostly. We've said every spec, or basically as a majority for the last, it's changed a lot over the last few weeks. Oh, it's an all AF raid. It's mostly Destro. Oh, it's back to AF. Some Demo fights too. Now it's mostly Destro again. So don't get mad at me. If you're an AF fan, I'm sorry. I want to play some AF this tier too, but let's be honest, we can't have nice things. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch y'all again soon on stream. Peace.